Mike T., you were making the point this morning as a general manager that there is a lot of pressure that comes with this move. On whom?
On the LA Rams front office, they have zero margin for error. It's reckless and irresponsible to go 8 years without a first-round pick. You have great core players, Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, but if any of them get hurt, it's over. And I'm not so sure I even agree with Dan that when you look at the skill players from Detroit in 2020, like Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones, and going to Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, that's even that much better. And then when you layer on top of that you have to keep good young players like Josh Johnson, Troy Hill, Leonard Floyd, you have a very small window with no margin for error. So I think this is a really risky move. I don't know if they're better than Tampa. I don't know better if they're than Green Bay. So I understand why they did it. And the other concern I would have, if I was a GM, I would say to Sean McVay, hey, look, on September 6, 2019, we gave Jared Goff a record guarantee over $100 million, and you said we could win a championship with him. So we're going to make this trade reluctantly. But what happened? Why, as a coach, and you're a great coach, you loved him a year and a half ago, and now we can't win with him. So we're going to put all our chips in the middle of the table. We're going to have a really good team. I don't know if it's a great team, and we have no margin for error over the next 2 years.
A lot there to react to. Go ahead, Dan.
Listen, we're talking like you know what I love, Greeny? America's going to see how great of a player Matthew Stafford is. Like, I disagree with Mike T when it comes to just like talking about the skill players. This is a guy that has had a top 10 defense once in his career. He went 11-5 that year. The Rams are a top 10 defense. This is a guy over the last 6 years, his team averaged 89 yards per game running the football. The Rams averaged 126 yards on the ground last year. This is a guy that in 12 seasons in Detroit had a 100-yard back 12 times. Do the math, folks. That's one a year. The Rams have done more than that in the last 3 seasons. We've never seen Matthew Stafford in this kind of environment. We've never seen Matthew Stafford with these skill players, this run game, this kind of offensive line, this scheme fit with Sean McVay in a top 10 defense. This is a guy that every player says, like, yo, that dude's really good. And everyone's going to go, well, he hasn't won in the playoffs. We've never seen him with this kind of competent team around him. The reality is both he and the Rams have chose to try and choke on greatness rather than nibble on mediocrity. And RC's right. They got to go win a Super Bowl. But at least they're taking their swing at it. This is a no-brainer for the Rams.
I like that phrase. I like the nibbling on mediocrity. RC, I think it could be phrased this way. Tell me if this is reasonable. We have long thought Matt Stafford might be a great player, and he was just in a bad situation. Now we're going to find out, right? It's going to be now or never for Matthew Stafford in L.A.
Yeah, 100%. We have two different things here, right? The reason this trade happened is we had a quarterback that gave up on his organization, and we had an organization that gave up on their quarterback. And that's how we got this marriage. That's how we got this trade. But even Aaron Rodgers early on this year, when speaking about quarterbacks that can do special things, he brought up Matt Stafford, and he just called him number 9. Darius Slay Jr. often talks about how great he believes Matt Stafford is. I was thinking earlier this morning about the Detroit Lions as a whole, and I don't necessarily put Matt Stafford with these two guys as far as their position. But they had Barry Sanders, who's my favorite running back of all time, I believe the best to ever do it. And they had Calvin Johnson, who was the best I'd ever seen, who best I ever lined up against. And these dudes didn't win playoff games. These dudes don't have highlights that we can run this week for Super Bowl. And they're two of the best to ever live. And Matthew Stafford is really talented. Matthew Stafford is a guy that they decided to pick number 1 overall. And we have seen flashes. Now he gets his opportunity. Now he gets a chance to write a legacy. And I think it was the perception of Matthew Stafford, right? Us understanding the arm talent, us understanding the measurables, the Los Angeles Rams understanding those things that said, you know what? If we have that dude, that makes us different. Here is what I will warn the world about. I was talking to Ramon Foster the other day, who was a second-year player the year we played against Green Bay. And I asked him when I was talking to him, I said, didn't you think you'd go to another Super Bowl? Didn't you think you'd win another Super Bowl? And he said, as I was walking off of the field, seeing the confetti fall, the thing I said to Marquise Pouncey, who was injured that game, was, don't worry about it. We will be back. He never got back. The Steelers never got back. So I warn the Rams against this. You don't just run it back. It doesn't just happen. And so there are some other pieces that Mike Tannenbaum is talking about that you have to take care of. There's some other things that you have to do, because we have learned now it's a what have you done for me lately world in LA, unlike any other. Todd Gurley, Jared Goff, huge reasons we went to a Super Bowl, now not even on the team. So you got to get it done, and you got to get it done fast.
That's right. And to pick up on a point that Mike Tannenbaum made before, the next finger, if it doesn't go well, is going to get pointed at the coach. Sean McVay became a legend in part because he transformed Jared Goff from a guy who looked like he might be a bust to a guy who took them to a Super Bowl. Then all of a sudden, anyone who could prove they had Sean McVay in their contacts became a head coach in the National Football League. But all of a sudden, to Tannenbaum's point, and Mike, you can say it again, less than 2 calendar years ago, he told the organization, sign this guy to a $140 million contract. It was the biggest contract in the history of the sport at the time, and a year and a half later, he can't win with him. That is a reflection to at least some degree on the coach, Tannenbaum, isn't it?
Absolutely. And again, when you make these transformational decisions as an organization, as a GM, you have your head coach, you have your owner, you say, hey, we're going to give this guy $100 million, Sean. You like him, right? We can win with him. Absolutely. New scheme. We feel great about it. Well, what happened? It's 18 months later, and you start John Wolford. Is that where we are? So what happens in a year and a half if Matt Stafford turns out to be good, but to Dan Orlovsky's point, maybe he's not as great as Dan is saying? Where are we going to be then? 8 first-round picks, 8 years without a first-round pick, Sean. So if we're doing this reluctantly, and you have to be held accountable to what you said 18 months ago, because $100 million impacts our inability to keep some of these other players. So we have to make sure that we can win with Stafford for the foreseeable future.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.